The following review is intended for entertainment purposes and targeted for adult fans of the series.
Now that the video's over, you can let me know down in the comments what you thought about this episode, as well as my review of it. But I don't know what else you could do. You could also make sure to smack that thumbs up button to let me know that you enjoyed this video. Even with all of the ridiculous bloopers. Hello there, heroes, and welcome back. I figured if the comic reviews are hanging out in the 1990s, the episode reviews should be as well. No, of course, I'm kidding. Beast Morphers is on its second hiatus. By the by, going into that hiatus with an episode that apparently a lot of people thought was far better than I gave it credit for. That's reviewing for you. With the Silver Skull still trying to return from whatever dimension it is that we sent him to, I need to get the remaining 20 episodes of the show that he cursed me to review done. This time for sure. To catch up any new viewers, in 1994, USA Network took a shot at the TV juggernaut that was Mighty Morphin Power Rangers with tattooed teenage alien fighters from Beverly Hills. A campy rip-off kind of a show where 4 Beverly Hills teenagers, Lori, Gordon, Drew, and Swinton, are transformed into the Galactic Sentinels, Scorpio, Taurus, Centaur, and Apollo. Gigantic superheroes that fight the 12 to 15 rotating monsters of Emperor Gorganis and his pet bird Lechner at the behest of Nimbar, a big blob alien.
Okay, I guess that makes sense.
So, let's take a look at the 21st episode of Tattooed Teenage Alien Fighters from Beverly Hills, The Leech. Please make sure you're subscribed to the channel to see all of my videos. Ring that bell to get your notifications set up so you find out whenever I post any brand new videos. And if you're interested in supporting the channel financially, check me out on Patreon or Ko-fi. After the return of the short episode preview thing that sometimes they use and sometimes they don't, and the opening credits, the episode starts... Anyone? Okay, it's been about almost a year. I don't really blame you. To this point, all 21 episodes of this show have started on the planet Molecula, home of the evil Emperor Gorganis and his purple pet bird thing, Lechner. Gorganis has a diabolical plan this time, having the Sorcerer bring a Sicranian mind leech to use on the Sentinels. At Beverly Hills High School, Drew is dealing with a couple of film students setting up a camera near her locker. Her aunt Nicole is there, by the way, wearing a ball cap over a braid and a look that just screams trying to look young. Nicole wants to direct the show that she stars in, a soap opera, so she's trying to prove that she can direct by making a documentary about Drew, who apparently just won some kind of National Teen Writing Award. Nicole is called back to the soap opera set to film another scene. Throughout the show, they've been explaining why Nicole is sometimes around and sometimes not around, as the fact that her soap opera character is in a coma, but occasionally waking up when Nicole's not a part of the episode's story. Gordon walks up and shills himself as Drew's potential agent, and as soon as the camera crew gets set up to film, the Sentinels' tattoos flash. So this I thought was actually kind of clever. The portal is right around the corner from Drew's locker, but when the Sentinels go to leave, the camera crew follows Drew even when she tells them not to. Swinton comes up behind the camera crew, sees what's happening, and unplugs their light. When the crew turns around to see what happened, the Sentinels leave.
You magnificent bastard, I read your book!
The Sorcerer is on Earth and just straight blows up a planetarium. Believe it or not, the scene in the cave is nearly as pointless. Nimbar reminds the Sentinels that the Sorcerer plays mind tricks. Lori says whatever the Sorcerer is, it's creepy, and they transform.
That was a great scene.
Even the fight appears to be just as pointless, but of course we know better. We see that the Sorcerer has the leech and a ball on the end of its wand, although it appears to be several of them. It manages to zap Centaur with one, and then the Sentinels gang up and zap the Sorcerer until it retreats. In the cave, they comment on what an easy fight that was, as we now see that there's a leech stuck to Drew's neck. Back at the school, the film crew sets up to get a shot of Drew walking into the school, but in something of a recurring gag in this episode that I will comment on later, they can't get it right in time. Drew walks in and says hello to Gordon very cheerily and happily, and is wearing kind of a frilly dress vest and has her hair styled differently. Her attitude is just very chipper and upbeat, which for Drew is incredibly unusual. It gets even stranger as she asks Gordon to recommend a good Ivy League business school, because now she wants to go into international stock trading. There's no security in performance art. When Lori walks up, equally stunned at the change in Drew asks her about trying out for cheerleading. Yeah, there's definitely something going on here. The camera crew is finally ready to shoot, so of course Drew says she now has to go to work. Nicole says they can change locations and film there. And the cafe is where we find out that something is definitely wrong with Drew, even though I don't think the leech is actually visible in these shots. Maybe Drew thought it was a blemish and covered it up with makeup? She asks Swinton to take her out on a date. What's more, she says she wants to go and get a big double cheeseburger. I don't know if I've had reason to mention this particular character note for Drew, maybe once, but as Swinton points out, she is a militant vegetarian. The film crew is so incompetent that they forgot their, well, film, so they leave with Drew and Nicole. The other Sentinels discuss the personality changes they're seeing in Drew. Gordon thinks that Drew is just putting her best face forward for the documentary, but Lori points out that Drew hates fakeness. What's more, Swinton says that they have to figure out what's going on with her, or it could be trouble for the Galactic Sentinels.
Excuse me, what?
This isn't Lori saying that she doesn't even want to be a Sentinel anymore. If anything, Drew has seemed more polite, happier, more amicable. Anyway, of course, the episode then immediately explains and shows us why this is going to be a problem. The film crew finally gets their act together long enough to get something on tape, and Drew explains what her next short story is going to be about. It's about 4 Beverly Hills teenagers, Lori, Gordon, Swinton, and Drew, being recruited to fight an evil alien emperor and his gigantic monsters. Lori runs over to play damage control, declaring the story just insanely unbelievable, right? But it turns out that nobody was really listening. Nicole was watching the film crew, and the film crew was watching what they were doing. Nicole says that she will hear the story the next day when she edits the footage. We get a new exterior shot of the school at night, but instead of being something they filmed, it seems like it's just a picture that they've changed the lighting of. The Sentinels are sneaking into the school at night to get the tape out of the cameraman's locker, and the cameraman is apparently one of these dumb, smart kids. The combination to his locker is taped to the back of the lock. They get the tape out and Swinton plays it in some kind of portable tape player to confirm it's what they're looking for, and now notices the leech that is now on Drew's neck. And this thing is pretty shifty apparently. It's at like the 3rd different position on her neck that it's been. We get the other half of Gorganis' plan here, not that there's all that much to the plan to begin with. The Leech has absorbed enough information now, so now it has to come back to Gorganis. The Leech instinctively knows that it needs the Sorcerer as a host to survive. So Gorganis will send the Sorcerer back to Earth, the Sentinels will go to fight the Sorcerer, and the Leech will be able to jump back over and get back to Gorganis. And then Gorganis will have all of the Sentinels' secrets and know exactly how to destroy them, I guess? Credit where credit is due, as small, nitpicky a note as it actually is, they established that the Leech is moving. Swinton and Lori spotted on 2 different places on Drew's neck, and Gordon realizes that's because it's moving around. Number 1, that's real gross. And second, it's very hard to believe that nobody, especially Drew herself, would notice this. They quickly piece together that this is why the Sorcerer left so quickly, and why Drew's personality has changed. They, of course, want to tell Nimbar right away, but Nimbar also has something to tell them as their tattoos flash. The Sentinels start to tell Nimbar about the Leech, which they think is some kind of moving alien mole, when Drew shows up late, having been at putting lessons. She sees the Sorcerer on the screen and leaps right into action, transforming before anybody can stop her. They finish explaining about the mole, and when Nimbar sees it, he identifies it as the Leech and explains that it's taking Drew's memories. Although the line that he uses is, "It's stealing your memories," like he's talking directly to Drew, even though she's not in the room. The Sentinels were instructed to prevent the Leech from returning to the Sorcerer, but it does so before they even get there. In fact, Lechner congratulates Gorganis, speaking with a completely different voice, by the way, and Gorganis complains about the Sentinels interfering with his plan before they even arrive.
Space is warped and time is bendable.
Taurus goes to blast the Sorcerer, but Scorpio points out that he might accidentally blast the Leech into the portal, sending it right back to Gorganis, which is exactly what he wants. They have to make sure not to let the Sorcerer get into that portal. That might be a little bit tricky for the audience to see, seeing as they never bother to visualize the giant portal, so we have no idea where it actually is. They fight hand-to-hand for a bit, and then Centaur just shows up and calls for Nitron. Apparently, combining minds made the Sentinels forget that blasting the Sorcerer could have terrible consequences, as Nitron just blasts away. Eventually, the Sorcerer turns its wand into a sword to have a sword fight, but this just leaves the Leech hanging on to the outside of the sword. So Nitron flicks it off, steps on it, and then blasts the Sorcerer until it retreats.
That was easy.
Back at the cafe, Drew is back to normal and can hardly believe all the things she's being told that she said and did. Apparently in the intervening time, the Sentinels shot a replacement scene for the footage of Drew talking about all the Galactic Sentinel stuff. Remember that nobody involved in filming the scene was actually listening, so they didn't know what Drew actually said. Nicole and the film crew come in, Nicole saying that she watched the scene and she loved it, crediting her directing skills for why it was so good. This one ends really strangely and kind of upsettingly, actually. Despite this entire scene poking fun at Drew for the things that she did while under the Leech's influence, Swinton plays the date thing 100% straight, even though he knew at the time that something was wrong. It's time for their date and he's holding her to it, saying he's picked out an excellent burger joint. The other two Sentinels hold her to it as well and gigglingly follow along, saying this should be fun to watch. Let's read the signs. Episode 21, The Leech. Pros: a switch to a positive identity is still negative. Gorganis' plan kind of makes sense and not directly monster-focused. Cons: Nicole and the camera crew felt unnecessary. Gordon's shallowness, and let's talk about that ending. TTAF, you weird, strange, confusing little show, I actually missed you. The Leech gets 3 signs out of 5. I know this first pro sounds a little bit weird, so let me try to explain. Often in these hero stories, when you get a personality change in one of the hero characters, it's for the negative. Take a look at Lori earlier in this season, changing into an irresponsible, confrontational slacker that didn't even want to be a Sentinel anymore. But in this case, Drew goes from being a misanthropic loner to a friendly go-getter. But the change is still negative because it's not who Drew actually is. It's not being true to herself. She's acting a lot more like Gordon, actually, and it also serves to compare those two characters very well. There are flaws in Gorganis' plan, but at least he had one this week. It's unclear exactly what he was hoping to find out. The teaser sentence for this episode, I believe, mentioned that he was trying to learn their secret identities, but I'm pretty sure he either already knows them or doesn't care. There are some weaknesses that the show has established that would be useful for Gorganis to know about. Base location, weapon frequencies, overall weaknesses, etc. So this was a pretty useful idea. And it's kind of neat that this plan isn't specifically focused on one of Gorganis' monsters. Yes, it's a Sorcerer episode, but really only because the Sorcerer is the host for the Leech. The Leech is the linchpin, the Leech pin, if you will, of this plan. It was more creative thinking than send a monster and cause chaos. I'm not really sure why Aunt Nicole and the film duo had to be a thing in this episode. It was a weird kind of framing device, and the only purpose for it that I can think of is that's how the Sentinels figured out about the leech on Drew, when really that's something that they should have just noticed themselves at any particular time. Funny enough, it made this episode kind of feel like modern Power Rangers with a bumbling duo that only exists for comic relief. Though with Nicole there as well as the strict director in this case, it did give it a feel of Lieutenant Stone with Bulk and Skull's police officers. As I was about to film this take, I realized that I don't know if I ever specifically mentioned this point, so just to get it established, throughout the episode, Gordon shows very little concern with Drew's personality changes, and even seems to point out that she's acting better now because she's acting like him. I can understand him liking those personality changes since they make her more like him. The thing is, the two of them have known each other for a while now, and as much as they can try to deny it, they're friends. When a good friend of yours that's very different from you starts acting just like you, number one, you start to wonder if they're playfully mocking you, and then if it continues, number two, you start to get seriously concerned. Gordon literally at one point in this episode asks why they should care that Drew is acting any differently. Are they trying to make his character irredeemable? But that's not nearly as bad as what Swinton did at the end of the episode, and when Swinton does something in an episode that's worse than Gordon, you know it's pretty bad. I don't mean to go too heavy-handed here, but this is really the best example that I can come up with. Swinton forcing Drew to go through with the date request that she made while under the Leech's influence is like holding someone to something that they said when they were drunk. Add in the fact that this is a date and it becomes really troubling and not nearly as cute as the episode thinks it is. And then Drew's friends support Swinton in this. I was really hoping that the three of them would suddenly burst out laughing and go, "No, we're just kidding, of course. Come on, let's go get a salad." But no, it's played completely straight. Yeah, let's force a girl to go on a date that she doesn't remember asking for and make a vegetarian eat a cheeseburger. Nothing possibly wrong with that. As I've often said, this show is a trip. It's weird and wacky and strange, and that has not changed at all. Funny enough, this episode is kind of average, run-in-the-mill in terms of the show's overall strangeness. Let's see if it gets any weirder next week by taking a look at the 22nd episode of Tattooed Teenage Alien Fighters from Beverly Hills, The Opiate of the Future. Dude! Emperor Gorganis sends Slagar! Shah! Best name ever! To capture an alien who can predict the future. But when the Sentinels rescue them, they hope to use their powers to their own advantage. That's gonna do it for the return of the Tattooed Teenage Alien Fighters from Beverly Hills episode reviews. Thank you, heroes, so much as always for watching. Now that the video's over, you can let me know down in the comments what you thought of this episode, as well as my review of it. And while you're down there, make sure you smack that thumbs up button and let me know that you enjoyed this video. Until next time, heroes, may the power portals protect you. No, of course I'm kidding. Beast Morphers, it's on his set. This time for sure. Oh, shoot. Fighting against giant monsters sent the, this whole thing went off the rail. To explain this, the Leech instinctively knows that it needs the Sorcerer as its hope. Okay, that's fine. They finish explaining to Nimbar about the mole, and he sees it on the screen, explaining She sees the Sorcerer on the screen and leaps right into action, transforming before anybody can stop her. The Sentinels shot a replacement scene for the one where Drew spilled all the stuff about the Galactic Sentinels. Nicole comes in with the film crew, having watched the scene and loving it, and yeah. And it's kind of neat that this plan and this monster situation isn't specifically focused on, I'm doing that again. And Drew's friends support Swinton in this. Is analogous to someone holding someone. But that's not nearly as bad as what Swinton did, and when you. Thank you, heroes, so much as always for what? Thank you for much, so much, heroes, for what? That's gonna do it for another Tattooed Teenage Alien Fighters from Beverly Hills episode review. The return